What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and I invite you to grab a beverage, a seat, and a snack. Let me talk at you for a minute. Today, the thing that I'd like to talk at you about is this game, Demonship. Demonship is a micro sci-fi survival game, what I like to refer to as a pocket game, created by Lemme the Shinobi. Now, Lemme is kind of wears a lot of hats around the hobby. He's an excellent painter, game designer. He's worked with Sean Sonner over at Relic Blade, does a lot of work with Blackslight Studios. Awesome dude, super talented. And he made this game. Now, as always, I like to talk about the art in the game and kind of the overall vibe of the game first. And this game hits a lot of nostalgic points without being a complete rehashing, without being just a remaster or something of something that already exists. It's very, very boomer shooter-esque. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, a boomer shooter refers to games such as Doom and Wolfenstein, kind of that first generation of FPS games. From the way the board is laid out to the way the tokens look, it's got that feel to it. Now, another thing that I love about it is that a lot of the art in the book that's not amazing miniature photography is these kind of two-tone, two-color, lino-cut style works. Now, I don't think these are actual lino cuts, although they might be. I assume this is probably a digital piece of artwork, but it's designed to have that kind of woodcut, lino-cut, double block print look to it, and I think it's absolutely awesome. Look at that one. Absolutely awesome. So that's my kind of first impression just flipping through the book. Oh, and this one right here, this one's really good. This one's really good. Yeah, just good quality art that fits the vibe and helps set the ambiance for the game. The game is played in 3 stages: the power stage, the emergency stage, and the escape stage. In each of those stages, you're trying to do a certain thing. In the power stage, you're trying to get to the power room and get the power going back to the ship. In the emergency stage, you're trying to get to the nav bridge and interact with that console to engage evacuation protocols. And then in the escape stage, you're trying to turn on and get in an escape pod to get off the ship. A lot of the rooms and the steps as you go through those stages have some RNG to them. I'm hoping that in the future there will maybe be something where you get some more layouts and some more rooms and stuff. But if not, that's perfectly fine. In this same section, it gives you your terrain list that you will need. Now, Blackslight does sell a really, really nice MDF kit where kind of all the pieces fit inside the box, and the box is the actual base of the thing. It's a really, really cool kit. There are also 3D printed options. I went the route of handcrafting my own walls, and they're not the best, but I think they're gonna get the job done. Now, the starter box, which is what I bought, comes with tokens and the 5 base models that you need, which are a survivor, a gun demon, 2 blade demons, and a frog demon. However, you could absolutely create all your own models. You can just get the rule book. I think that if you have a printer, I think the digital bundle for this game is probably the best value. I think it's like $20. You get like a PDF of the rules and all the STLs for the walls and the models and everything else. So if you have access to a 3D printer, that might be the best value in the game. The starter box clocks in at about 50, I want to say, 40 or 50. And then the box with the MDF terrain is, I want to say, 50 to 60. Which is about par for the course for Blackslight for something along those lines. And for the starter box, I think that's a super fair price. The book then goes into a couple of pages on solo game resolution, kind of explaining, introducing, because someone may be playing this and they're not exactly a seasoned solo wargamer, so it gives a little bit of information about how that stuff works, how to count the spaces on the board, how the round structure is set up. And you can count orthogonally, side to side, up, down, as well as diagonally when moving and doing all that stuff. And each time a new room is entered, a round has passed, and there are 6 total of 6 rounds in the game. The game can end because of one of two things, either the 6 rounds or your pulse rate reaching 7. Pulse rate is the mechanic that determines how many actions are happening as well as when the game ends. When you get to a pulse rate of 7, you're kaput, your heart pops, you have a heart attack, you die of terror or whatever. But that's when the game ends. And we'll talk about how pulse rate is mechanically operated in the game in just a second. The game is played with D6s. I would imagine that at the most, you're going to need at least 7. You would need at least 6 because I think that as soon as you hit 7, you're done. So at the most, I think you need 6 D6. But I could always be wrong. But that sounds right to me. Yeah, that sounds right. Once you're into the game has 2 main phases of play. So you've got your power, emergency, evacuation, or escape. You've also got individual parts of what set up the round. So those are the room phase, which is when you walk into a room, figure out what it's going to be, get all the terrain set up, and then the wits phase. All the action happens in the wits phase. The book then dives a little bit deeper into the room phase to explain a couple of things that can potentially happen. So when you go to open a room, you roll a d6 and you consult the list of rooms, of which there are 6. If when you roll the room that you are already in, you get the corridor room. If you are in the corridor room and roll another corridor, the next room that you find is automatically the one that you are looking for. As far as setting up the walls and all that stuff, it's pretty direct. There is a diagram. It's got a legend and a key. It shows you exactly where to put everything on the grid of your 6x6 board. There are times where it will tell you to discover something. When that happens, you roll a d6 for each item that you are discovering. If it's a 1 to 2, no element is discovered. If it's a 3 to 4, a single element is discovered. And if it's a 5 or 6, 2 elements are discovered. Elements can be like crates, barrels, anything along those lines. Loot, stuff that you could potentially use. And if there is only 1 element to discover in the room description, then you discover it on a 4+. We then come into a little bit of expounding and expanding upon the wits phase. So your pulse rate starts every game at 3. At the beginning of the wits phase, you roll those 3 dice. On 4-ups, it goes to the survivor pool. On 3 downs, 1 to 3, it goes to the demons action dice pool. Demons get to activate first. So each of those demons, like if it's a 1, the demon will attack. If it's a 2, the demon will move. If it's a 3, the demon will give itself an evade token. So it tells you exactly what to do with those dice rolls. Once the demons have gone, then you as the survivor get to go and you get to use however many dice you had. That's how many actions you get. Now after you go, the demons get to go again. And there is a chart where depending what you do will dictate what those demons do on their second activation. So like if you attack them, they'll attack you back. If you move, they'll move. Just like this. Etc., etc. Pretty straightforward. And again, if your pulse gets to 7, game over, you're done. You have expired upon the demonship. Now the pulse actions that they get are resolved in a specific order. So if you have 2 actions and they get certain things, when they go to resolve their actions, it's always the evades first, then the moves, then the attacks. I assume that's been play tested to make sure that they are doing as much damage as possible. Because it's a survival game. It's meant to be challenging. It's not meant to be easy. That's a big part of the reason I'm sure that the demons get to activate twice as much as the survivor in that section again. So the game has something else called dynamic pulse system, where if a demon has pulse actions that are not performable or not advantageous to it, it will convert those down. So at 3, you have evade. So if you have an evade, you would do that. And then so let's say you've got 3 moves, but you're already standing beside the survivor. So obviously you don't need to move. those move actions will convert down to an attack action. So those 3 moves would convert down and become 3 attacks to make sure that the demons aren't wasting actions and, again, inflicting as much carnage as possible upon the survivor, which is you or myself. We then come into a little bit of a breakdown of some different actions, starting with movement, where it just kind of clarifies some things like you cannot move through occupied spaces unless you're performing a blitz action. You cannot move through spaces occupied by the survivor. And demons also cannot move through the survivor or other demons. When moving, demons will take the shortest route. So it clarifies a little bit of that. A blitz is when the survivor performs the blitz action and you move through demon occupied spaces, and each space that the survivor moves through prompts an attack from the demons. After placing the survivor on the final space, roll a d6 for each demon occupied space they move through. On a 1, the survivor is dealt 1 point of damage, and on the result of a 6, the survivor dodges and may bank a 6 result for number of the beast. Damage is dealt a single point at a time in the game. If it hits, it's 1 damage. Each point of health dealt to a damage that isn't evaded subtracts 1 health from the demon. When a demon's HP is reduced to 0, they are removed. Excess damage is ignored, discarded. Don't get to carry that over to anybody. And survivor damage, the sheer style and skill of the survivor means that when they deal damage, they don't miss. No dice are rolled, only damage is dealt. Demons with an evasion token will evade. So not a lot of dice rolling in terms of doing the damage, you just kind of do it. Now, on the other hand, when demons do damage, you as the survivor are much more highly trained and efficient of a killer than they are, so you get a dodge chance to try to ignore that damage. With evasion or shooting at something that has evasion, the way that works is the first point of damage is just immediately ignored and the evasion token is removed. So that's the way that demons have the ability to negate damage without just being capped. When your survivor does dodge, it's a very, very simple and straightforward process. You roll a d6 for each point of incoming damage, and each 4-up is a point of negated damage. Again, when you take that damage, it adds to your pulse. And when your pulse gets to 7, game over. Now, with that dodging, every time you dodge an attack with a 6, with a natural roll of a 6, you can bank that 6. And if you get 3 of them, in a single round, you manage to unleash the beast, which means you get 3 actions that do not trigger demon actions. Just free and clear 3 things that you can do, spending one of those 6s at each time. When you go between rooms, the banked 6s are discarded. Melee damage, as you would probably guess, you have to be adjacent to something to do melee damage. For range damage, your weapons are considered to have unlimited range because it is such a tight space. However, they do have to have line of sight. And the way line of sight works is that you have to be able to draw unobstructed line of sight from the corner of the survivor's base to 2 corners of the enemy's space. And if you can do that, then you have line of sight to that demon. The interact action is the only way to interact with the board and the stuff other than shooting or punching things. If there is no demon adjacent to you while you're next to something, you can just automatically unlock it. You don't have to roll anything. However, if there's a demon next to you, you have to take a test. And tests in the game are 4-up. That's the base target number is 4-up is a success. So if there's a demon next to the loot that you want to try to pick up or unlock, you got to take that 4-up test and pass. If, however, you fail a test, you have the option to exert, which is you can add up to 2 pulse to yourself, and for each pulse that you take on, you increase or you modify your die roll by 1 to pass the test. When you go to a new room, you do take a room test. In order, you want to find rooms 4, 5, and 6, and you can exert on those to find the specific room that you need. So if you roll a 4, you can exert once to get it to a 5 or a 6, from 5 to 6 or from 3 to 4, whichever, to get to the room that you need to find in order to escape the Demonship. And the last note in this section is on persistent effects. If an effect is described as persistent, then its effects remain in play until it is removed by a console or at the beginning of the wits phase. And there are 3 persistent effects listed. darkness, cold, and fire. Darkness reduces line of sight to 2 spaces. Cold makes it so that demons are -1 movement and can no longer evade. However, the survivor must roll an additional pulse die at the beginning of the wits phase. I don't think it actually raises your pulse. You just have to roll an extra die. So there's a potential for an extra demon action in that roll. And the last is fire. So that affects a space, and every space adjacent is on fire. In any spaces affected by fire, deal 1 damage to models occupying or moving through them. Barrels damaged by fire will explode. Fire dissipates at the beginning of the following wits phase. We then come into the rooms section. So there are different maps, so there it gives you a little bit more playability. So when you go into a room and you get the room, you can then roll to see which layout of that room you get. And there's a legend right here to tell you what those things are. Pretty straightforward, easy to read, easy to follow, easy to set up, quick in between rounds. That's one of the beauties of the game, is that it's very, very fast. So even if you die, you probably got time to play another one. We then come into a terrain element section, which is mostly just defining for you the space that terrain takes up on the board. However, there is a note on locked crates that when you unlock them, there are 3 things that could potentially be in there: a flame frag, a style soda, or an armor plate. And it's on a D3 of 1, 2, 3, and in that order of frag, soda, armor plate. We then have a description of what those items do when used. And then we go into the demon spawn, like how to spawn the demon. When instructed to spawn a demon, the survivor's current space is the spawn point. So you roll a D6 and it will tell you what to do, ranging from they're right behind me, roll immediately again, and it'll tell you what to spawn. Demons, prowl. So the ambush, prowl, hunter, the 3 styles. Ambush is adjacent or as close as possible. Spawn is 4 spaces and out of line of sight, and hunt is furthest space within line of sight. And in front of the demons that it's telling you to spawn, it will tell you whether it's prowl, hunt, ambush, whatever. 4 or 5 is prowl to blade demons, and then a 6 is take cover. Prowl a frog demon and hunt a gun demon. We then have the stat cards for the demons. And now this, as well as, I'm gonna skip over something real quick, as well as this right here. These are reasons why I think that the PDF rules might be a little bit ahead, because this is basically overhead, like 2D terrain, that if you have the PDF, you could very easily just print it out on cardstock and be good to go, set up, ready to play. From the rulebook, if you wanted to use this, you would either have to chop it up, or, which you could do because it's, there's nothing you really need. Oh no, yeah, there is. There's rules on the other side of this page. But it's good, it's neat and fun that it was included. I think that's a classy move. I like it when I see stuff like that at the back of the books. Now, backing up to the stuff I skipped, we have a couple of different game modes, ways that you can play, ranging from like a new beginnings mode, which is kind of a game plus mode, like you beat the game a couple times. Now we're going to give you the plus mode where we can step up the difficulty a little bit. A versus mode where you're playing against another survivor. And then we've got land mode, which is another turn of phrase, a use of verbiage that strongly is strongly suggested of that old school FPS boomer shooter type game. I spent a lot of time in my CET classes in high school playing Doom and Wolfenstein over LAN connections. Then we have savior mode, where you're trying to rescue people off the ship. And then we come back to that really classy move of putting the 2D top-down terrain in the back of the. And that, my friends, is a look at Demonship, the micro sci-fi survival game from Malev the Shinobi and Blacksite Studios. As I mentioned earlier, the game for the starter set clocks in at about $50. If you also want their prefab MDF terrain on top of that, it's another $60. The terrain is very, very nice, but at the same time, it's very, very easy to make some terrain for the game. So I opted to save a few bucks there and go that route. Another route is the STL packages that they have for the game are very reasonable. I think you can get the whole game digital version for like 20 bucks. And if you have access to a printer, that really, really, really might be the best route. But that's my stance on that. That's our flip through the rule book, our little conversation. I appreciate you hanging out. Let me talk at you for a few minutes about Demonship. And I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server. Talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in your favor.